Welcome back. The OIC Special Envoy for Kashmir, Yusuf M.L. Dubey, said the organization is focused on the peaceful resolution of the Kashmir issue. He was speaking alongside Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi in Islamabad. Al-Dubey said the organization fully supports Kashmir's right to self-determination. The envoy said he will also visit the line of control tomorrow to witness the ground situation there. Qureshi said Islamabad wants an extraordinary session of OIC foreign ministers on the human rights situation in Kashmir. The foreign minister said Islamabad is concerned over rising discrimination against minorities in India. The Office of the UN Human Rights Commissioner has filed an intervention plea in the Indian Supreme Court over the controversial Citizenship Act. The rights body says it has informed India's permanent mission in Geneva through a notification. India's new law has caused countrywide protests and riots, killing 77 people in 3 months. The plea has asked the court to make the Human Rights Commissioner a party in the case against the act. Last week, UN High Commissioner Michelle Bachelet expressed concern over the Citizenship Amendment Act. Bachelet said she is alarmed by reports of police inaction in the face of attacks against Muslims. Iran has condemned organized violence against Muslims in India. In a tweet, Foreign Minister Jawad Zarif said the Indian government should not let senseless hooliganism prevail in the country. At least 47 people have been killed in clashes during protests over the citizenship law in New Delhi. Most of the dead and injured were Muslims, with thousands fleeing their homes in fear. The main opposition Congress party has demanded Home Minister Amit Shah's resignation. Shah controls the city's police force, which have been accused of aiding Hindu mobs in the clashes. But police have denied the allegations. Authorities are yet to provide an official account of what sparked the violence. A former member of the ruling BJP says the recent communal clashes in New Delhi have affected India's global image. In an interview, Sundhindra Kulkarni blamed the ruling party's followers for orchestrating riots in the capital. Kulkarni said BJP did not expect sustained and peaceful protests against the citizenship law. He said, out of frustration, party followers incited violence that have battered India's image in many Muslim countries. Kulkarni said reconciliation between India and Pakistan is necessary for peace and progress. At least 46 people have been killed in clashes during protests over the citizenship law in New Delhi. After deadly riots in the Indian capital of New Delhi, Muslims are facing an economic boycott from Hindus. 47 people were killed and over 350 others injured in violence that started during Anti-Citizenship Act protests. Muslims in the affected area say they are being denied groceries by Hindu shop owners, as Muslim shops have been either shut down or burned. They have also reported jobs and raw material for their businesses being refused. The fear in other parts of Delhi has led many youngsters to hide their identity by leaving their hijabs and skull caps at home. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has called on the Afghan government to abide by the prisoner swap clause in the Doha peace deal. In a statement, Qureshi said Afghan President Ashraf Ghani should ask US officials for an explanation of the agreement. The foreign minister said the Afghan president must understand the prisoners exchange is not one-sided. Qureshi said there are few spoilers which are against peace in Afghanistan and want to use Afghan soil against Pakistan. The foreign minister said inclusive approach and government is the only way forward for Afghanistan. The Taliban say both the US and the group must focus on the implementation of the peace deal. The US and Taliban representatives signed the deal in Doha on 29 February to end the long-running Afghan war. In a statement, the Taliban said the clinical implementation of the deal is necessary to resolve issues between the two sides. They said the most important aspect of the deal is the time frame, and any delay by either party will cause complications. Meanwhile, Defense Secretary Mark Esper said the US has begun withdrawing troops from Afghanistan.
The agreement says that we would reduce down to 8,600 within 135 days, if I recall correctly, and that drawdown would begin in the first 10 days. But, my instructions to the commander was, let's get moving. Let's show our full faith and effort to do that. As you know, I've said on many occasions that I'm comfortable we can still conduct all the missions we need to conduct at 8,600. So.
In Syria, 9 people have been killed and many others wounded in a missile attack by Syrian forces in Idlib. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said a surface-to-surface missile hit a residential area near the rebel-held city. Earlier, Turkey said it shot down a Syrian jet in the northwestern province. The Turkish Defense Ministry says the plane was targeted during an operation against Russia-backed government forces. The Syrian forces have confirmed the downing of the warplane. Meanwhile, a war monitor said the Syrian army has recaptured the strategic city of Sarakeb in Idlib province. Tensions in the region are high since Turkish and government forces exchanged multiple assaults in the last 2 months. Turkey says it has shot down a Syrian government warplane in northwestern Idlib province during an operation against Russia-backed government forces. Syrian forces have confirmed the downing. Earlier, Ankara said a Turkish soldier was killed in an attack by Syrian forces in northwestern Idlib province. The defense ministry said another Turkish soldier was wounded in artillery fire from Russia-backed government forces. The ministry said Turkey retaliated with full force and Syrian targets were heavily struck and destroyed. Meanwhile, a war monitor said the Syrian army has recaptured the strategic city of Sarakeb in Idlib province. Backed by the Russian airstrikes, the Syrian forces captured the town 4 days after losing it to the Turkey-backed rebel groups. Tensions in Syria are high since Turkish and government forces exchanged multiple assaults in the last 2 months. Turkey has rejected an EU offer of €1 billion in aid to keep 4 million migrants instead of letting them cross into Greece. At a news conference in Istanbul, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan accused Greece of killing 2 refugees. Erdogan also criticized the EU for not sharing the migrant burden with Turkey. The president warned millions of migrants will soon head for Europe. Meanwhile, EU interior ministers will hold an emergency meeting tomorrow to address the crisis. Thousands of people have massed on Turkey's border with Greece, which is taking all steps to prevent them from entering. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has claimed victory in the country's 3rd general election in a year. More in this report.
After 2 failed attempts to form a government, Israel has been plunged into political chaos. 2 previous rounds of voting, one in April 2019 and a second in September, delivered nothing but successive deadlocks. Even after the 3rd election, the exit polls show Netanyahu leading against arch-rival Benny Gantz, but still 2 seats short of a majority in parliament. While Netanyahu will likely be tapped by President Reuven Rivlin to form a government, his path to a 61-seat majority remains unclear.
We went through a few difficult election rounds, and it is time to stop these election rounds and to form a government in Israel. It is time to reunite. It is time to reconciliation.
3 projections gave Netanyahu's right-wing Likud party 36 to 37 seats. Gantz's centrist blue and white alliance has between 32 and 34 seats. Gantz was underwhelmed by the results.
I understand and share the feeling of disappointment and pain because it is not the result we wanted. If this will be the result, it is not the result that will put Israel back on the right track.
Neither of the 2 main party leaders have been able to command a majority in the 120-seat parliament in the last 2 elections.
In the US, the death toll from the new coronavirus now stands at 6, while the disease has killed over 3,100 people worldwide. More than 89,000 people have been infected by the virus in 60 countries. This report has more.
China has recorded its lowest number of new infections in the past 24 hours, but the number of cases elsewhere has been increasing. The virus has already infected nearly 5,000 people in South Korea and over 2,000 in Italy. Nearly 1,000 have been infected in Japan against a background of a growing number of deaths, while the US is now faced with a new challenge.
Unfortunately, we are now starting to find more cases in Washington state that appear to have been acquired locally, and we know the virus is spreading in some communities here in Washington. We currently have 18 positive cases in Washington state. King County has 14 cases, including 5 deaths. Snohomish County has 4 cases.
The European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control has leveled up the risk of the new coronavirus from moderate to high for people in Europe. Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Tunisia have reported their first coronavirus cases, while the death toll in Iran has crossed 60. Meanwhile, Australia has announced it will use a biosecurity law to restrict movement of people to contain the epidemic.
This can pertain also obviously to individuals, so it's again potential under the Biosecurity Act that you could have the prevention of movement from persons in and out of particular places, and they would be powers that would attach to an individual rather than necessarily the place itself. So,
Pakistan has confirmed its 5th coronavirus case, while Senegal has become the 2nd country in sub-Saharan Africa to confirm the presence of the virus.
A possible much-needed respite as scientists in Brazil have sequenced coronavirus DNA just days after the country's first case was confirmed. They say it will help better understand the virus and deal with the disease. More in this report.
A group of Brazilian scientists has carried out the first genetic sequencing of the novel coronavirus in Latin America in no more than 48 hours. Elsewhere, the process has taken 15 days. The work was done by a laboratory at the medicine faculty in Sao Paulo University in collaboration with the Oxford University. Scientists say previous work on the Zika virus meant investigators were able to move quick.
We have been studying the Zika epidemic for the last 4 years. On how to develop this technology, what we did was develop technology that was quick, at a lower cost, and so that it can be done on a larger scale and during an epidemic.
With the DNA map of the coronavirus, scientists hope to better monitor the virus and speed up the production of a vaccine.
The quicker we were able to provide information from this virus, and we were quickly able to provide answers to the health services. We were able to say if the virus was transmittable or if it is mutating within the population. This is important for health services so they can prepare for a possible epidemic.
Over the weekend, Brazil's health ministry confirmed the country's 2nd new coronavirus case. The epidemic, which began in China, has killed more than 3,100 people worldwide.
Germany's Interior Minister Horst Seehofer has refused to shake hands with Chancellor Angela Merkel amid the global COVID-19 outbreak. Before a meeting on migration, Seehofer said he has stopped offering handshakes during the outbreak. A German government crisis committee has widened cross-border travel guidelines and cancelled major international events. The health ministry has advised people with cold symptoms to stay away from mass events. The Robert Koch Institute for Disease Control said the number of new coronavirus cases in Germany has risen to 150. We have a lot more coming up right after this short break, so stay tuned. Welcome back. Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has dissolved the parliament. The constitution gives the president powers to dissolve parliament after completing 4.5 years of its 5-year term. The president has called a snap election for 25th April, 6 months before the scheduled general election. Rajapaksa was elected to office last November but has said he cannot work freely because his powers have been limited by the opposition. He faces restrictions because the opposition commands a majority in the 225-member parliament. The Election Commission says the new parliament will meet on 14th May. China has become president of the UN Security Council for the month of March, pledging to promote solidarity and cooperation. China's permanent representative to the UN, Zhang Jun, said Beijing attaches great importance to the work of its presidency. Zhang said China will strive to strengthen cooperation with all parties to ensure the Council fulfills its responsibility. The Council's presidency is a capacity that rotates every month among its members. Security Council has 5 permanent members and 10 non-permanent members elected for 2-year terms. Beijing has fired back at Washington in the ongoing row over the deportation of journalists. A foreign ministry official says China reserves the right to respond to the U.S. decision to reduce the presence of Chinese journalists in America. The spokesperson said the move negatively impacted bilateral relations. He added that in reality, Washington is expelling Chinese journalists. Earlier, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced plans to expel journalists associated with major Chinese state-owned media outlets. Pompeo said the U.S. was retaliating to Beijing's conduct with American journalists who faced surveillance, harassment, and intimidation. The top U.S. diplomat said America's goal was reciprocity and to establish a long overdue level playing field. Moderate Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar has dropped out of the race for the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination ahead of Super Tuesday. Following Mayor Pete Buttigieg, Klobuchar endorsed former Vice President Joe Biden in an apparent effort to block the progressive Bernie Sanders. This report has details.
Democrat supporters across America are set to vote in the biggest day of their primaries to pick a contender against President Donald Trump in November's elections. 14 U.S. states will offer 1,357 delegates, while in some of the states, early voting is already underway. Early front-runner Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders urged supporters of the dropped-out moderate candidates to join his campaign.
And tonight, I want to open the door to Amy's supporters, to Pete's supporters. I know that there are political differences, but I also know that virtually all of Amy's support and Pete's support understand that we have got to move toward a government which believes in justice, not greed. So to all of Amy and Pete's millions of supporters, the door is open. Come on in.
After a morale-boosting landslide victory in South Carolina and a double endorsement, Biden believes he has a better chance on Super Tuesday.
You know, just a few days ago, the pundits declared my campaign dead. But then along came South Carolina. And South Carolina had something to say about it. As I stand here today because of the minority communities, I am very much alive because of you. So now, tomorrow, Texas is going to speak.
Democratic field that featured more than 24 candidates has now shrunk to just 5 as the choice for primary voters becomes even clearer.
5 people have been killed as a tornado struck the city of Nashville in the U.S. state of Tennessee. Police said the fatalities took place in the East Nashville region. The fire department said about 40 collapsed structures had been reported. Police said several gas and power lines were damaged. Officials said emergency responders were treating the injured. Nashville's John C. Tune Airport has sustained significant damage as several hangars were destroyed. 25 people have died after a bus rolled down a steep embankment in South Africa's coastal Eastern Cape province. The Transport Ministry says 62 others were injured in the accident. In a statement, the Transport Ministry said the initial investigation reveals the driver lost control of the vehicle. The bus was carrying more than 80 people traveling between Butterworth Town and a settlement named Shebe. The crash is the deadliest accident in the province since 2015, when 35 people lost their lives. Cameroon says its army has killed 10 separatists, including 3 women in the country's northwest region. In a press release, the Communication Ministry denied online reports of civilian deaths in the military operation. The Communication Ministry said a separatist commander known as General Fireman was among the dead in fighting between rebels and soldiers. The rebels have been fighting for independence for 2 Anglophone provinces since 2017. Battles between the two sides and attacks on civilians have left more than 3,000 people dead. Human Rights Watch has accused Cameroon's armed forces of taking part in the killing of at least 21 civilians on February 14th. The army denies the accusations. 6 soldiers have been killed in a militant attack on a checkpoint in central Mali. The Malian army said 10 other soldiers were also wounded in the Mondoro attack. In a Twitter post, the army said militants used rocket launchers to target parked military vehicles. The government spokesperson Yaya Sangare said soldiers repelled the attackers, destroying their vehicles. He said the army launched airstrikes overnight, causing major losses of life and material to the armed terrorist group. Over 200 Malians have been killed in the last 4 months of clashes between the army and militants. 13 people have died when their riverboat sank in Brazil's northern state of Amapá. The state government said 28 people are still missing, while emergency services have rescued 46 people from the sinking vessel. Authorities say the ferry sank 100 kilometers from the municipality of Laranjal do Jari in the Amazon rainforest. The vessel was making a 36-hour journey between the cities of Santana and Santarém and the state of Pará. The fate of the missing is uncertain. In the upper sea of Corte, just off the coast of Mexico, activists have rescued a humpback whale caught in illegal fishing nets. This report has more.
The Sea of Cortez on the west coast of Mexico was once called the world's aquarium. The vaqueta is a species of porpoise ubiquitous to the northern part of the Gulf of California. But the vaqueta is now on the brink of extinction. Members of the Sea Shepherd Conservation Organization had been patrolling the area, which is a vaqueta refuge, when they came across a humpback whale.
As we were guarding the critical zone, the Vaqueta Refuge, we found a humpback whale badly trapped in an illegal tutuaba net.
The whale was in trouble, caught in a net.
We took part in a disentanglement of a humpback whale in the critical zone in the Vaqueta Refuge, and it's a sad reminder of why it's so important for us to protect the refuge against illegal fishing.
Humpback whale numbers had fallen dramatically until the 1985 ban on commercial whaling. Since then, the numbers in many population groups have improved. Today, the biggest threat to humpback whales are collisions with ships and being caught up in fishing nets.
Global markets have been highly turbulent, falling between plunge and recovery as the risk of a novel coronavirus recession grows. Central banks and policymakers have scrambled to contain the economic impact of the disease by announcing stimulus packages. More in this report.
The global economic outlook is difficult, with the outbreak giving markets the jitters worldwide. Highlighting the risks, Organizations for Economic Cooperation and Development has downgraded its global economic growth forecasts by 0.5 point. The OECD report warns global economic growth may even be negative in the first quarter of 2020. In the meantime, Japan has announced fiscal and monetary stimulus measures.
We will promptly prepare the second emergency measures package by utilizing this year's supplementary budget, which is more than 270 billion yen.
The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank have earmarked emergency funds to assist member countries to get around economic challenges. Following assurances by the Federal Reserve meant to counter the economic impact from coronavirus, Wall Street rebounded. The DOW recorded its biggest gains since 2009.
Yeah, I think the big driver of the rebound is kind of what we were discussing earlier. It kind of just got oversold. If you look at all the short-term positioning, it went from hugely, bullishly positioned to negatively positioned. You saw huge outflows overall. And I think when you have things go that fast, the market doesn't go up in a straight line, doesn't go down in a straight line. So these things are kind of normal.
Global financial institutions can extend the rapid credit facilities and rapid financing instrument to distribute emergency financial assistance to countries hit by the epidemic.
European markets are trading higher over hopes global central banks will introduce monetary policy measures to mitigate economic impact of coronavirus. Investors are buying back undervalued stocks as major stocks are recording fresh rally. Frankfurt's DAX is trading over 2.5% higher after Asian shares jumped 21%. CAC 40 in Paris has gained over 2.5%. London's FTSE 100 is trading over 2% higher as generator supplier Agrico stocks surged over 7%. In Asia, Nikkei 225 lost over 1% amid fears over global economic slowdown. Shanghai Composite closed over 0.75% higher, despite record slump in manufacturing activity. Meanwhile, international benchmark Brent crude oil has gained over 1.5% following record losses in last week. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.